people listening might know, the project began with me and my high school students when we first learned about that term called period poverty, which is the lack of education about reproductive biology, lack of access to menstrual products, lack of access to clean and safe toilets. We did not know any of that. We traveled to the United Nations, to the Commission on the Status of Women. We learned about the issue. We learned about the inventor of a sanitary pad manufacturing machine, and we were ashamed by our own ignorance. We were ashamed of our own shame about our periods. I think maybe high school girls are a particular, high school young women, I should say, are at a particular age to be very proud, but at the same time, rightfully defensive about anybody wanting to put down what is a natural coming of age process. And so we learned about these things and we wanted to make a film about it. Yeah. As you said, there were many barriers on our path in doing this. First of all, we had to fundraise to make the money to send a pad making machine to our partner organization, Action India, in India, and we had to fundraise to make a film. In order to fundraise, as everybody engaged in fundraising knows, you have to be upfront and say what it is that you're raising money for.
They want to know where the money's going.
They want to know where the money is going, and this certainly caused all of us to go on an odyssey about our own shame, our own willingness to talk about periods, what that means, what that is. To our great luck and surprise, and also maybe just a larger indication of the way that the world's attitudes are going about this, we found the more we talked, the more doors opened for us. When we had completed the film and were first going on film festival circuits, we won what's called audience awards. That means that the audience votes for what film they like out of the many noble and wonderful short documentaries. And we thought, you know what? Maybe people are ready for this message. Maybe they're ready to hear. I suppose that is why I love teaching so much, and why you know, right after the Oscar excitement, everyone said, you know, oh, you're going to quit teaching. And I don't think I could, because I am so moved by seeing how I learn from my students and how they inspire me, because I couldn't see that, you know, I don't need to have a code word for my period, or I shouldn't be ashamed of my period, without their eyes to sort of see that for me. Also, I continue to be touched by the sort of generational buy-in of grandmothers, mothers, fathers, grandfathers, daughters, that is in this movement for menstrual equity. You know, probably my favorite character in the documentary, for anyone who's seen it, is the sort of grandmother of the group of women making pads. Her name is Shabana, and she became this feminist because she was a victim of domestic violence, and now she leads and was really at the forefront, the liaison between the nonprofit that we work with in Action India and the women in the village of Katikera making the pads. And it was because of her strength too, as a person who had seen more, done more, been there, that she could inspire and motivate young people to believe in their worth. And so I love all of that. And I just think it's so key for this movement, and so key for humanity, right? That we're going to learn and we're going to carry on.
Let's look, you know, forward. We've reflected a whole lot. Let's spend a couple minutes sort of looking forward in terms of what both of you see on the horizon. You know, and it can be a brutal, clear assessment. It can also be a hopeful assessment, both for menstrual justice here stateside, right, here in the US, and then also around the globe. Take it away.
I think we will be having all states in the United States to take away. I think the pressure is going to be too great. I think in 5 years, I'm just
Say
saying,
it. Say it.
I think that we will do away with the so-called pink tax or tampon tax because I think people will demand it. I think there will be free access to period products in schools, or at least I hope that that's the way that it continues. I think that we still have a ways to go in the prison system where women are subject to horrible treatment that we've heard where, you know, they're bleeding naked essentially, and they have no help or kind treatment, just basic humane treatment, even forget about kind. That's something that I certainly hope will happen, though I think that's longer in coming. The idea of period leave, of menstrual leave in the workplace, I think is controversial for good reason, because it could be a place where employers could discriminate against women because they think that they would be in the workplace less in a sanctioned way. On the other hand, I think it's important to recognize that 20% of menstruators suffer from horribly painful periods that are real and that exist, and that a woman or a menstruator is probably capable of determining for themselves whether or not they're able to go to work and would not, quote unquote, abuse that privilege. So I think that's a conversation that needs to happen in the United States, and I think will happen. My guess is that that's going to be slower than the tampon tax. You know, I think go to www.thepadproject.org. Have to say that, look for ways to get involved. But in my capacity as executive director for the PAD project and getting funding, people, because we have handled our periods for so long, people tend to forget that this really is a critical issue that needs help, and to speak up for menstrual equity is to speak up against patriarchy. I talk every day to people from around the world, including the United States, including Western countries, where they tell me about women selling their bodies, especially now during the pandemic, in exchange for pads and tampons. I mean, somebody willing to, not willing to, but somebody having to do that breaks my heart. So to stand up for period equity is also to stand up for gender equity. It's a bigger thing than you might think about. It comes down to basic human rights, and that's it. Thank you so much for talking to us.